All right, guys, so let's get started. Quick note, probably the file that I end up with today will look a little different than the one I'm going to give you actually on Canvas. And I bet actually Longoria is really confused because I think I sent him this one by accident, which is actually just like the first 30 minutes of what I was doing last night. However, it's fine because I'll basically just do the tutorial again. To be fair, even Bob Ross, do you guys remember the show where the painter? Did you know he used to paint the painting of the image he was going to do before the show started? He did one during the show, and then after the show, he painted it again. There was always 3 copies of every single episode because he just believed in practicing and doing things for the sake of becoming better. And I can't think of a better way than to express the same thing for Rhino, guys. Especially, it's not something you could just pick up and just, oh, good. Oh, I could just play the piano today. I could just hit some notes and it sounds okay. That's definitely not the case. It's definitely something you have to practice rigorously and use it, right? And to be fair, it is one of those things too that when you stop using it, it does kind of fall off a little bit. Like, oh yeah, how was I putting stuff together? But what is really nice about it is it's a simulation of what? Reality. So a lot of the things that you see in this program, they're literally trying to mimic some of the things and qualities of life, right? Not only in forces, but in a scientifically driven environment. Now, for our project, obviously we have basically a recreation of something. We want to make as close as possible some of the things that we're achieving. Now, don't get me wrong, we're in D3, we're second year studio. To be fair, there's most schools that wouldn't even touch this at all until your 4th year of studio. So hats off to you. It is a hard program. San Antonio College, not Rhino. Anyway, in our case, I actually have a couple of images, and I'm not going to bother explaining the UI today, right? That's definitely elementary school. I don't think I need to do that. And to be fair, I think even Professor Longoria has gone over some of the smaller detail stuff. However, just to recap, hopefully you know how to put a picture in here because all you'd have to do is type in picture, and of course, we can put some more imagery. Now, hopefully the rest of my iCloud loaded, but if you put the floor plan and the section of what we have today, obviously I'm working with Center Pompidou for today, and one of the first things, of course, I did was scale it. So, of course, typing in units and making sure that I was, of course, in feet, those kinds of things, is definitely a given. The next thing that I could definitely do is make sure that my dimensions were correct. So one of the first things I have to decide is what is a scale? You know, I don't see any people in here. I chose some of these images because, well, some of them show a little bit more detail than others, right? And, you know, I might trace this one, not necessarily trace that one. It just might be too blurry and it might be so different. So one of the first things that I actually checked was in my top view and started making some lines. So I typed in line and quite literally started to line up at least these random drawings from the internet. I can't express that enough because they are, in fact, just random drawings from the internet. Some of them are skewed, some of them have been scanned incorrectly, and to be fair, some of them were actually generated and drawn by other students doing this exact same project. So there's errors, right, to say the very least. And I definitely came across some as I was putting together these 2 images. Now, the first thing I did was, of course, establish the scale of a person. So I do see at least the head of a person and at least maybe we see a couple of people, right? I'm just going to fake it till I make it. Again, the point of this project is to recreate some of the goodness and the essence of these projects, not necessarily dial in that we got the perfect scale and the perfect of what it is outside. To be fair, you guys may know this already, but a lot of construction drawings, they're pretty inaccurate compared to the actual building that's created. In fact, in field, they make some changes, right, that obviously make the drawings incorrect, technically speaking. So keep that in mind too. It's a huge factor, and definitely a huge factor in the 90s through 70s, or 70s through 90s. However, I'm going to draw a line, so L-I-N-E. I'm going to click on a base point. To be fair, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what a base point is in a rasterized image. So I'm going to just choose kind of the top. Again, we're going for recreation, not necessarily perfection. In my case, I'm going to type in 5 feet 10 inches, enter. And it's going to go, hey, how big do you want it? Well, in my case, it was already in ortho mode, so it stayed there. I can hold shift and, of course, click. And this line is 5 feet 10 inches. In fact, if I do DIM for dimension, I can click on both pieces. And funny enough, get 510, right? So again, always verifying what you do is never a bad idea. That's DIM for dimensions. However, the next thing we need to do is scale all of this up. So one of the first things I did was, well, I lined up some of the things that I know line up in my building to some of the things that I know that line up to this. And I go, oh shit, right? It doesn't line up at all. In fact, I realized that these line up okay, but the others didn't. So one of the first things we have to do, and scratch maybe this 5'10" measurement because it's still pretty bad, right? Well, actually we should make this to scale. What scale? This scale. So let's scale everything. However, it makes a lot of sense regardless of any scale that these drawings have to line up first, right? So let's of course do that. To be fair, we can fake it a little bit. We can use gumball, and if you don't know what gumball is, it's probably the greatest thing of all time. Why is it called gumball? I have no idea, but it does remind me of the Cartoon Network show, so that's always nice too. But in our case, like I said, I want to line up, and the way that I lined up was basically using this pole, or this column, if you will, as a center line. So I use that center line, and to be fair, I've already rotated it, but if you needed to rotate it, obviously you could type in rotate. Make sure that you click on the image itself. You pick something that you're going by, right? So for instance here, and I go, well, I want this exact position to be a little bit over. To be fair, not even noticeably different, but in my case could make all the difference for this wonky image that actually I found out towards the back of it is kind of like falling off. It's like a weird scan or something. However, not a problem for gumball because, well, once I get this portion lined up to this piece, and that's actually looking pretty good on this side. Well, I got the middle of that one, not quite that one. It's supposed to be about right there. So what does it need to get, bigger or smaller? Smaller. So what can I do? Well, I can scale something. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of different scales. There's scale 1, there's scale 1D, scale 3D. I'm just going to use scale because I do want all the dimensions involved. In my case, I'm going to scale it, and I'm going to reference. It's going to ask for a base point. The base point is just honestly wherever you start or what you actually want to reference to. In my case, maybe it's the center point of this image. And I want to tell the program, hey, I'd like you to make this pole right here come down. So I just clicked and then referenced it back to that pole. You guys see that? I know I go pretty quick, so it's better to kind of just watch in the motion. However, I began to notice that, well, this side's correct with the drawing, awesome, but what gives? This isn't correct at all. So what do I do? I gotta fake it a little bit, right? I gotta scale it one direction. Now, obviously that's probably too much, and that's probably too much, right? But I do want to try to reach the other side. And to be fair, I have a lot to go, right? So I might need to move this around a little bit. To be fair, I could probably still get a little bit more information there, right? And there's still a lot to go. Oh, getting there. To be fair, it helps to make sure that you get it aligned correctly, by the way. Because my alignment, again, I was kind of just faking it till I make it. And to be fair, one of these could be the real drawing and one could be honestly a little off, right? However, as we're doing that, if I hold shift, it is going to be proportional. If I don't hold shift, it'll only stretch it in that one way, right? So again, definitely useful. But fake it till you make it, right? I mean, nobody's going to come in here and be like, no, I think that's a little too big. I mean, obviously, if it's wildly off, it's wildly off. It's just what it is. But that's looking pretty good. And I definitely got the other side. Almost nailed that one. But that one still seems actually a little bit off. I could do the same trick with scale and use this as my reference point. I'll say this other piece over here. I'll hold shift and take it really onto that point. You might actually find a situation where you're like, wait a minute, it's just not a good drawing, right? Again, this center pompadour is either too long in the plan this way or not long enough, right, to say the very least. So you might have to even do this, right? Take the whole piece, use gumball, and actually work both of them, right? Now be very careful about this. Now, most of you in your research, you should have actually got some dimensions. Does anybody know the dimensions of the footprint of center pompadour? Where's my center pompadour team? How long is it? Not exactly important for this tutorial, but definitely important for your drawings, right? I'll hit DIM. I'll basically hit one side of the object and the other side of the object. I'll hold shift so that I know that it stays straight. and I can reveal that it's 312 feet and 7 and whatevers, right? However, I definitely want to verify that with my research, especially if I found out the building's actually 400 feet long, those kinds of things. Or it might actually become apparent that maybe just my drawing's wrong, right? And going, oh, I measured it from here to here, and I only got 111. It's supposed to be 130. So again, I may actually stretch those things, right? In order to make actually even the drawings that I found online more accurate. Does that make sense, guys? So again, I know I'm trying to explain a lot of different things here, but it is super important that we get to this foundation because, well, now we can just trace it. Awesome, simple. Well, what's maybe one of the best ways to trace it? And how do we take that trace and, of course, model it and start to make it three-dimensional? Now, of course, I'm just going to kind of fix this real quick, make it a little bit more accurate. Honestly, I've messed it around so much that it's probably not going to just get there. And in most cases, guys, especially if you get the same image from the same website, they'll probably line up at least more than this situation. To be honest, I kind of got two different images and similar images to the group. That way I can alleviate some of the problems that they're going to run into, such as lining up some of the stuff. Now, to be fair, this is probably pretty close for today. It gets there, it gets there. And to be fair, this isn't the one I'm going to trace anyway. All right, the one that I'm going to trace probably is at least this one for the pieces because they look a little bit more accurate and there's a little bit more detail to trace from. Now, let's say that was correct, right? We're good to go. Now, let's scale the whole thing, right? Because, well, to be honest with you, I can take now even my images, I can line them up to certain items and go, that's about the same size, right? I can even rotate that and go, wow, look at that. Those are the same size. Now, one thing that you can do, of course, when you click on any item, especially a picture, is go to your properties. It looks like a little color wheel. I'll click on the paint tube, and of course, I can add some transparency. That definitely makes it a lot easier to trace, right? So again, hopefully you're following along on that one. But again, one of the first things I do is just line up the pictures to each other. The second thing I do is, of course, now let's make it a 1-to-1 scale, right? Everything that we do in the digital realm is essentially 1-to-1 or the true scale. That way, well, we can always make it bigger, we can always make it smaller, and we don't have to make multiple models every time that we have a different scale, which you know can be a lot of times in a studio, right? That being said, let's go ahead and scale all of it at once, and we need that 5-foot man again. Oh, still got him, right? Because that's still 5.5 feet. Well, let's actually double check. I can actually type in what as well on an item and it'll tell me what the geometry is. It'll tell me everything about it, in fact. Just typing in what, enter on any object. And again, it's definitely very useful when I need to understand if a line is open or closed, or again, I just can't see the information that I need to see. Now in my case, I need to have everything go to basically this line, so I'll get everything except my reference line. Why? Because if I move my reference line, then what am I really going to, right? I need that 5 foot 10 inches so that I can match a man. So in my case, I'll unclick it, right? And now scale everything. So in my case, I wouldn't get the dimension line there, but that's okay. That's just representing something. In my case, it's asking for a base point. Awesome. I got my base point right here. Oh. However, I am screen recording, so mine does this weird thing where it doesn't like to show my O snap, especially while I'm screen recording. Bear with me. Scale again. There we go. It's going to ask for a reference point. Okay, well, the reference in question is actually the head of the man there. And now it's going, well, how big do you want the head of the man? Well, 5'10". So in my case, I just have to match the other side of my piece. So in my case, there it is. Awesome. Found it. I think I accidentally scaled my piece too. So let's try that again. Grab everything except for your reference line. So hold Control or Command to unselect it. I'll type in scale. Base point. Gosh dang it, why does it keep doing this shit to me? There we go. It's because I'm screen recording. And we'll reference that. Done. That's fine. But in my case, it's basically just said, hey, are you aware that you changed your dimension? Yeah, I'm aware. DIM, and I do want to verify that still 5'10". And it is, right? So now all I changed was really everything else in the drawing. To be fair, in the digital realm, it's not easy to tell right? To be honest, how big or small something is, because you can infinitely zoom in and you can infinitely zoom out. However, once we're done with this portion, now we can really start to work with it, right? I can start to trace it, I can start to get some of the elements out of it and use it because, well, I already have this is all the drawing components that you have for this project. The floor plan, just one, doesn't matter which. Obviously pick the most influential one. Some of you guys, like Ron Champ, only has one. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of us have limited choices, some of us have more choices. But in this case, that's definitely enough. Now they're at the same scale. So now I can actually take this drawing, I can put it over here, and I could even start, if I accidentally mess up my view, I can always go to set view and go back to my top view. But I could even start setting up my full, 50 inch by 36 and really start talking about the drawings. And so I will even call this the drawings. Sweet. Be like, where do you want it? I want it right here. How big do you want it? That big. The drawings. Okay, maybe that's too big. Shorter. There we go. But yeah, again, one of the things I definitely teach in my computer graphics is to stay organized because these things can get really messy really quick. However, just to cover it before we go into the three-dimensional, and how am I looking on time? I got about an hour. That's ample time. So let's go over some of the two-dimensional things that we can do. For instance, one of the first ones is we got to draw this stuff. At the end of the day, even if you decide to model it or not, you have to draw it first, right? Obviously, in your case, you're kind of forced to draw it or trace it because, well, I'm asking for digital drawings, right? However, it can be a hybrid situation in which you take the same drawing that you're using, you print that out to a certain scale, and you draw either on top of it, or you hybridize it in Photoshop. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit more advanced, but it's definitely worth trying to achieve, especially in a partnered group like this, right? I mean, especially if you have somebody who's just like, I'll let you do the digital, I still want to do analog and build models. Again, I'm for it, but keep in mind, guys, you're going to be forced in the next school to use digital. So use this small project as a catalyst in order to learn the technologies. But that being the case, let's go ahead and get started in terms of drawing and some of the things that we can do to draw. So one of the first things you guys probably know is line. And I can't tell you how much I just draw lines in my projects, to be completely honest with you. And sometimes I just start establishing stuff. One of the best things that this program can do is copy. So very often, I'm simply copying things and going, oh, I see another horizontal there. Oh, I see another horizontal. Again, I'm not trying to achieve absolute perfection. I don't want you guys to sit there and measure it. Why? Well, it might be in meters. You're never going to figure it out. And the whole point is, well, we want to get in ballpark, but I don't need you to know the exact floor height of Center Pompidou. Don't get me wrong, it's probably cool. It's probably a great factoid. But again, I want you to replicate the drawings more importantly. In our case, I'm just using the slightly terrible graphics of this image and ballparking it, right? Kind of staying a little bit in the fuzzy area, but of course, making the best of it, right? Obviously getting as close as possible, not doing something like that, but getting close as possible. And already right there, I can get every single horizontal that I can see. To be fair, some of this stuff you probably don't have to draw over and over again because you already probably see this multiplication happening, especially in this project, right? Where obviously if you draw one floor, you can copy, those pieces. And I think that'll become apparent, especially when I start modeling this. Because I'm not going to sit there and sculpt 80 pieces. I'm going to sculpt one and then copy it 80 times. And I know some of this stuff probably sounds like, well, duh, professor. But you'd be surprised how many people put in extra work that they don't necessarily have to, and they just didn't know. So again, what I like to do is, of course, also keep organized. So I'm going to set a layer. I'm going to name this layer images, just so I can stay focused. And I'm going to turn this one into that layer. So I'm going to right click, change object layer. It's going to change it, but you won't notice. The only way I can notice is to, of course, be able to turn it off. And I like to lock these things because it's very easy to accidentally move your image. So again, lock your image is definitely key. But one of the other things that we can do is, of course, just start drawing. So like a polyline. again, this is all two-dimensional information. So the next thing to write down would be polyline if you've just never used a polyline before. Obviously, I can hold shift and it's going to remain straight. I should probably use a better color than green because that's probably hard to see. So I'm going to go with maybe like a gold. Let's try that again. But clearly I'd want to draw the entire object, especially if I was going to poche it. In fact, I could even align with some of my tools, especially using O-snap. It's not as funny as it was 10 years ago, but a lot of people saying O-snap back in the day. But clearly in my case, I'm just holding shift and faking it till I make it, guys. This is exactly what I'd like you to do. But notice we use that same horizontal line, but notice the image is warped. It's incorrect. What do? Trace terribleness? No, we make the drawing better, right? However, nobody's expecting you to be an engineer tomorrow in any sense of the word. So you don't have to. But, you know, based on just what we're doing right now, you should see that, yeah, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some clicks. But it's all going to be worth it. Because, well, you only have to do it once. To be fair, what's even great is the better you trace it and the more organized you are tracing, the more easier it is to model it as well. However, let's end that one. Let's start a new one. So I can always end something by hitting enter and spacebar again to enact the same command over and over again. And again, zooming in and zooming out is a plus. You have to have a 3-point mouse. Everybody in my computer graphics class knows that. But yeah, just drawing the heck out of these things, right? Start tracing it because, well, it is going to start to reveal itself, especially when you have that layer, right? And again, that would have taken me a little while, honestly, on the drafting table. But what's great, guys, is now I can come back and I can edit it, right? I can see the points. I can grab that point. I can move it. And by all means, I can do whatever I want to these lines. I often say I love this program because I literally can't mess up. And that is kind of a brilliant thing, especially as somebody who came from analog drawing where I'd mess up one thing, get all pissed off, crunch up the whole thing and throw it away and start over again. And that time, it's a lot of time and money, right? However, in this program, I could just Command Z, right, all day long. But again, some of the tools that we can use is really just horizontal and vertical lines. I can't express that enough. Now, you'll notice that I'm doing this all in a top view, right? So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a lot to trim here, but I may want to do a certain layer in horizontal, a certain layer in vertical. However you would like to keep organized. But in my case, I don't like to draw one line at a time. I'd rather go like this. Boom, boom. That's a vertical, that's a vertical. Ooh, there's a vertical, there's a vertical. Vertical, 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 vertical. Because I can go a lot faster that way. That, and I can also trim whatever is unnecessary. Like I said, I can't mess up. So in my case, I'm just getting all the junk that I probably shouldn't have to draw. However, keep in mind for the plans and section, guys, we're not just drawing the structure, we're drawing everything. Right? So just the model is the structure part. Otherwise, I get some very dry drawings, to say the very least. But that's looking pretty good. I got some of the technology in there. Okay, there's another one, another important one. Important. That's pretty important there. You know, I see a lot of these circle elements, so I'm gonna just go ahead and draw a circle. Oh, looks like it's actually an elliptoid. Okay, so I'm gonna get an elliptoid. I'm gonna go one way. I'm gonna hold shift so that it stays one way, and I'm gonna hold shift to say the other. I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna go copy, 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 copy. And then what's really great is I can turn this off. I can go, oh, well, I don't actually need all that. Or maybe I'm just seeing it too harshly. Maybe I want to unlock, so I'm going to type in unlock. I'm going to click on my image again. Go to my pieces. I think I spelled unlock wrong, my bad. Unlock. That, of course, unlocks everything in the piece. In my case, I do have to click on the image, but you can't really tell. There's just some things that you pick up over time, right? You just know when you're clicking on things versus not. In my case, I got to go to properties. I got to go to properties. Is it still locked? Dang, still locked. All right. Unlock. And I got to stop pressing close. Okay, my bad. Well, obviously it's not going to unlock if you don't have the layer unlocked. So, my bad. We'll take that piece, get that piece, and I'll just make it a little bit more transparent. A lot better. And I can see that a little bit easier. Probably in the projector is better. Sorry. I know it's kind of hard. We used to have terrible projectors, and luckily they've gotten a lot better. But yeah, definitely a lot easier to draw that way. But yeah, you know, say there was this piece in question. Again, I'd probably want to lock my drawing. That way I don't accidentally mess it up. But I'd really take everything here, TRIM, and trim it, right? Obviously I don't really need these pieces underneath. So I'll start chopping them off. Yeah, don't need that one, or this one, that one, or this one. So obviously I'm clicking on everything that I don't need. Now, obviously there's a couple things I could do. I can trace everything and trim like I'm doing now, which I honestly kind of prefer, but it's entirely up to you. Some people like the hard way, some people like the hard way. I think they're actually all hard ways. They all take time, they all consume our time. To be fair, some people are better at geometry than others, and that's okay too. But don't want to get rid of too much. But again, I don't have to literally draw every little arc at once. I mean, there's definitely some ways to copy some stuff. To be fair, that's pretty intense. I mean, we could freehand it with this this control point curve. So I could freehand it, but to be fair, that is also equally a lot of clicks. Yeah. However, I can notice that it's mirrored, so I could mirror it, choose a point. In my case, mine won't find it. Come on, stop doing this to me. Just mirror it. See what I mean? Like, it gets stuck like that? It's because I'm screen recording. So you shouldn't have the same issue, and if you do, be careful. You might be screen recording to somebody, right? So in my case, I'm going to try mirror again. Ah, come on. Okay, now yours should just align up, but for the sake of my tutorial, it's just like I'll click anywhere just so it'll stop. But clearly, we don't have to make both halves, right? And to be fair, you could select both even. Select that midpoint, and of course, we can even move both points at the same time, right? So don't feel like you got to do stuff perfect. Feel like you got to end stuff perfect. You don't have to start it perfect, right? And honestly, the same could be said for a drafting table, right? Nobody like starts with ink, do they? You're a madman if you are, right? I mean, maybe Escamilla does, but in a sense, like, no, you start off with the construction lines, the pencils, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just making construction lines. I'm going to go in maybe with another layer and maybe even trace that, or maybe trace it again as I'm trying to take a single piece or part out of it. For the most part, I think you kind of get the idea. Eventually, I'm going to need to take something and trim it off. So in my case, I can trim them all at once. I don't have to sit there and trim one line at a time. Are you kidding me? Who's got the time? But in my case, obviously, I can trim some things, and I don't have to worry about my image getting chopped because, well, it's locked, right? So again, some pluses to doing that. But as you can see, it's going to take some time, yeah. But you only have to do it once, too. And what's really great about this is, especially with Longoria going over Illustrator and some of the two-dimensional qualities, you'll be able to do this whole drawing, and then he'll teach you how to shape it up a little bit, of course, in Illustrator. Now, if you're in my computer graphics or have taken it before, you definitely know how to use some Illustrator. But in that sense, at least for the sake of 2 dimensions, there's only a couple things left. Another one being offset. I don't know if anyone's actually showed this to you guys, but it's fantastic. It's called offset. And let's say I wanted a thickness of 12 inches, so I'll type in 12 inches, hit enter, and it's like, hey, where do you want it? The line up here, or, sorry, mine is freaking out. In my case, I can double the line, right? And I can double it for actually a lot if I wasn't screen recording.
Yeah, before you tell us that.
Good. Yeah, because there's definitely a lot you can do with that, right? Again, what the digital platform does best is duplicate. It duplicates the best, right? Anyway, let's talk about some modeling, because I do know that's probably a little bit more exciting, at least in terms, I know a lot of what we just did was like a recap for a majority of us. So let's talk about some of the stuff that maybe I've never even talked about before, at least with SAC students. And to be fair, let's just get into it. So obviously I want some sort of portion detail, and I do need to understand my project, and right now it's locked, and that's okay too. In my case, I'm going to switch to layer 4 and just start tracing it up. Like I said, I could do it two ways. I could just start going with the horizontal and vertical method, or I could really just trace it too. So in my case, I'm going to go with a polyline, and I'm going to fake it till I make it, knowing a little bit about this project. Of course, I can kind of really fake it, right? Just because, well, I know a little bit more about the project. I've also traced it last night and know some of the things about it that are kind of anomalies. So again, I'm going to do one piece here. I'm going to start a new piece as long as my O snap works. Jesus. Oh my gosh, stop it. There we go. So again, just tracing out the piece as, you know, as close as humanly possible. Again, I would hold shift during this parts, guys. Go with your gut, not necessarily just the image. It's a blurry, grainy image. Don't rely on it too much. But that's looking pretty good. And right now I'm going to take the whole piece. Well, see, this is why you lock things, right? Otherwise that happens. So again, I can't mess up. Edit, undo. I'm going to hit it, lock, and it's locked, right? So I'm going to get some of my curve points. Click. Oh, I don't want that one. Curve points. There we go. That one. I'm going to go with that, here, there, and there. Enter. I'm going to take the whole thing and join it, because I do want one closed curve, especially for what I'm going to be doing. But essentially I want a profile view and I want a top view, so I need to draw those real quick. Now I'll go as fast as possible, but to be fair, I know some more about this project, so I know that actually these poles are not perfect circles, but they're in fact elliptical. So in my case, I'm going to do my best to kind of find the center of that, obviously find the edge, and kind of give it the more elliptical pattern that this column has. To be fair, I'm simultaneously drawing kind of both right now, but in my case, I do need this kind of weird shape right there. So let's go ahead and get that. It looks like it's actually made up of like two circles. So again, I'm gonna do my best to kind of get those circles first, and or just fake it till I make it. They do look connected. So another thing that I could do is find a picture that, you know, maybe works better. You know, so for instance, I'm gonna go to some of the shots I got last night. Where am I? Come on, man. Design 3. Project 2. Some precedent files. Is that the one? Nope. Exercise? Nope. Student files? Nope. Structural precedents? That's the one. Oh yeah, there's the piece that I'm trying to make right now, those little joints or whatever. So I mean, that's definitely helpful. It definitely shows off the scale, shows off some of the three-dimensionality about it. Definitely useful. That's pretty useful too, right? I mean, there's a digital render of at least the same situation. So let's go ahead and add that one, just for reference, right? I mean, why not? That way I don't have to keep opening up that photo. I can just put it in there and kind of zoom in as much as I want, right? Especially in this program. But that being the case, it reveals that, yeah, that's much more of an elliptical pattern, and it reveals also maybe more or less what it looks like at the top as well. So what I opened it for, though, was to understand what this is doing. Oh, there's a space there again. So never feel afraid to kind of reference your own project, especially when you run into a question. Don't just be like, I just guess, right? At least let it be an educated guess. So in my case, this one's my educated guess. I'm going to start there, click, 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 fake it till I make it. To be fair, that looks like it's actually a pretty mirrorable situation, so I'm going to go ahead and mirror that one. I'm going to mirror it from my center point of my circle. I'm going to hold shift so that it's a perfectly vertical situation, and I'm going to put those together. Join them. Oh, I can't join them. Why? Because, well, they actually cross at a weird point, so I'm going to trim them. Trim them off. Take both and join them. Not too shabby. We'll take all of this and we'll trim it up. TRIM, trim, trim. Oh, not that one. Again, I can't mess up. Sweet. So we got that piece. I know there's actually a circle here too. Again, the more research you do, the more you'll know about your project. So we definitely have a circle here. And I kind of want to get the depth of that pole. So again, I'm going to fake it till I make it and get the depth of that pole, right? What about the depth of that one? Oh yeah, already got it. So we got the profile piece, sweet. So I'll take that, we'll take it over here. And that's actually looking pretty good. I might want to add some points or make that a little bit more organic, but I'd really want to make those decisions now before I start modeling this thing. But at least for the sake of today, that's actually looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the top view. Trash. Anyway, there's not a lot to get there. So it may need to focus and look at this imagery a little bit closer. And what I mean by that is, well, I noticed that it starts off as kind of like a pinching point. It kind of gets bigger around the column and then it kind of tapers off again. So don't get me wrong, we might have to use some of our orthographic skills and start looking at something like this and going, well, what does it look like from the top? Don't get me wrong, I've studied this project many years, so I have studied these pieces before. However, in our case, I do want to make sure that it lines up. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill the snap of this program. And screen recording. It's not actually the program's fault. It's iOS 26 that my computer just decided to upload and update for me. But I obviously want something that sticks in the same proportion, right? Obviously, I'm just drawing the top view here. So in my case, I need to come up with some sort of center line because, well, I know that it's going to be at least symmetrical. So I'm going to start off with a center line, and I'm going to start lining up some points, right? For instance, maybe one of the first things that I do is, well, I know that I need a center point of this. So funny, when I actually need it, it doesn't work, and when I do need it, it works. Anyway, there's my center point, even though it should have said center. Anyway, in my case, there's the center point, and you can kind of start to see that that's the hole that would be at the top of this. Now, to be fair, I'm going to fake it till I make it, and you might be doing as well. So, again, I'm going to hold shift, kind of go around, something like that. And again, try to use your, the points the best that you can, and be as close as you can to the actual object. To be fair, I think it does something like this, and actually curves up around us a little bit. And there. Enter. So that's looking pretty good. However, if I wanted to fix it, I could just always select the points and make it a little bit less bumpy or more bumpy in certain areas. Again, entirely up to you. And to be fair, the more research you do, the more likely you are to find some of these details, right? But that's looking pretty good. Let's see what it looks like mirrored. MIR. We'll take that same point and mirror it. Definitely not too shabby. I like it. I'm going to take that piece, join it, and let's get that circle because I know that's going to go through. Always make a copy. That's looking about right. So that's looking pretty sweet from the top. So I'm going to take this piece and let's start looking in 3 dimensions. However, if you feel like you can't zoom in into the world, make sure you hit zoom extents, found in standard. It brings it right into focus, and it's now focused on only that element. Again, that's zoom extents, right, or zoom selected. Okay, so now that we have both of those pieces, let's cut them out of a brick, right, or in my case, a box. So I'm going to type in box, and yes, I could use the same piece and really just kind of roughly make a square box, right? I mean, to be fair, that's a little big. And it's also in wireframe, so let's go to shaded and get some properties out. Let's get at least fairly close. That's about right there. That's looking pretty good. Not too shabby. So here's my top view, and that'll become important because, well, I'm going to use this to wire cut the top of this piece. And this one, what do you think I'm going to do? The same, but of course this way because that's the profile view. So as you can imagine, and what is pretty weird is if you wire cut from 2 different locations and you chop it, you actually remove all the pieces you don't need. So let's check it out. In my case, I want to wire cut maybe this top one first. Great. So wire cut. Enter. Take that piece, chop right through it. Well, I need to do the same thing to this guy. Chop right through it. Boom. And last but not least, that guy. And right through there. Sweet. I can maybe even start to get rid of the pieces that I don't need. In my case, not quite. It's reaching right up to the edge of that box. So in my case, let's make it actually a little bit bigger. The box, that is. So again, I can't mess up. Make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Wire cut. All the way through. You'll notice I can't do all three of these at once. It's just not going to work. Enter. Enter. All the way through. There we go. So now that we got that piece, what do we need to do? Well, let's line up this piece. Well, I guess I don't need that guy. Get out of here. We'll take that one. To be fair, I could use one of my views as well and be like, ah, gotcha. There you are. And we can line that up, honestly, anywhere here. And let's wire cut it again. So take that piece, wire cut. I don't want to go up, but I definitely want to go to the side. So Y direction. And make sure you go all the way through. Now in my case, it's not showing graphically, again, because of the screen share. It might actually show up on the recording, I'm not sure. I don't sit there and watch every recording. But now I can get rid of some of the stuff I don't need. Ooh, looking familiar, huh? Pretty complex object, but actually looking really close to what we need, right? And that's probably pretty close to what you're gonna get, at least for design 3. However, we can make it look a little bit better. Let's take that piece, copy, because I mean I might mess up, so I definitely want to make another copy. And to be fair, I like to kind of build one piece at a time, and especially while I have some of these items, right? Or these items themselves. And quite literally, there's my column. Right? There's a piece that I eventually will need, so I do want them to align up, right? To say the very least. However, if you notice in the rendered view, it's a bit choppy, right? It's kind of stark, very Toy Story 1, if you will. Not that anybody's ever, paying attention to that. But we can also chamfer an edge. So if you take this piece and or chamfer or fillet. In my case, I kind of want to round it, so I'm going to go with fillet actually. So fillet, not surface, not fillet. You're looking for fillet edge. So fillet edge. Wonderful. In my case, well, this is actually to scale, and I just need like just a little rim, if you will. So in my case, I'm going to control the distance, even though it actually wants the edges first. That's okay. Let's try that again. Oh, it wants a radius. Gotcha. So I'm going to go with 0.75 inches, which is about 3/4 of an inch. Awesome. Then I'm going to click, and you'll see, of course, the number change. In my case, I just want to click on every single piece, just so you guys can kind of see what that does. Again, every edge. So you might need to restructure or re-surround yourself. Again, zoom select. Definitely helpful. But we can get all those pieces. Fair, I think that one was supposed to be chopped off, but that's okay. So I do want to get these all in one piece, just because honestly doing them one at a time doesn't actually work so well. Like, it'll get some edges, but the others it won't. And they won't just line up the way that you kind of hope. So it is definitely something you want to do all in one piece. Again, I'm just holding shift and adding to my selection. It's looking pretty good. Oh, I forgot a hole too. So we might need to chop from that as well. But that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna hit enter. Enter again. It's gonna think about it. Oh man, what does it want? Oh, there we go. There we go. And just like that, you start to see kind of these edge lines. I think it just looks a lot better. A little softer. But we still have one more piece to go, so let's keep going. I need to chop this piece out and this piece, but I need to put them together first, so I'm going to join them. Wire cut. What do you want to wire cut? This piece. Awesome. I'm going to go straight through it. Don't need that piece anymore, and don't need that piece anymore. So just like that, we got our whole piece, but I'm not going to sit there and do that over and over again, right? However, now I do need to build the rest, and to be fair, we already have the drawing. So in my case, I'm going to show those back up, Come back. There we go. So I'm going to show these back up and really start placing our model. To be fair, I could make another copy of this. That way I don't accidentally mess that up as well. And maybe for my final selection, you know, me and my partner, we said we only wanted to do this much. Awesome. So we ended up taking this line, trimming it. And of course, this is our only portion that we're working with, right? Oh no, I accidentally trimmed it up. Again, you can't really mess up, but you may have to do stuff over again. I know I'm losing you guys, but stay with me. It's almost over. It's almost over. But we've got our image. That was also your cue to stop talking, please. Thank you. All right, so let's at least build that portion. And to be fair, I already still have too much. Let's reduce that even more. All right, I'm gonna go with actually just this amount. All right, well, I mean, why not? We should build some of that. So rectangle, and we'll get some of it. So again, trimming down the portion that we want and getting started. And it should be actually at the same scale as long as we scale things correctly. So I'm gonna copy some of these. Now I'm technically kind of looking at a top view, but looking pretty close. Now obviously it's because it's the wrong direction. And I want to focus on that a little bit better and just rotate it. I'm gonna hold shift to make sure that it stays rotated. And basically go from there, right? I mean, why have to do all that over again when I've actually got it all right here? So where's those pieces that I started drawing? Somewhere. There we go. Usually we got a curve in there. Awesome, I want that curve. To be fair, I could even keep it together. Don't necessarily have to separate like I'm doing right now. Obviously, I'd want to select all those pieces I need. Arguably even put them in the same spots because, yeah, as you'll see, my alignment of my image, I should have done a little bit better at the beginning. But for the sake of tutorial, it's not so bad. But let's get some of those pieces, right? And start extruding. So it's looking pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and extrude. Oh my God, come on. I'm so tired of this program. Sorry, it's only because of the screen share, but it makes me look like an idiot. So I don't know. I hate when it does that. But let's get that piece. Let's put it in the right direction. Boop. And bring it down and line it up. What I like to do is kind of just like I would build a regular model, guys. I'm not gonna like try and build it and kind of like keep it in the air. I'm gonna build it on the ground and kind of just build it on the ground first and then pick it up, right? So I'm kind of building it on the ground right now, if you will. See what I'm doing? Anyway, so let's continue. We'll take that second piece and kind of see it in there. So really what I'm doing here is just making my dowels, right? Let's rotate that, boom. I can even build it sideways if I wanted to, right? Boop. To be fair, we could also go to another view and go, hey, does that line up? Oh, that doesn't line up. Boom. Now it does. Now it does. Boop. And now it does. Perfectly. From there, I can take, again, that piece. Now, awesomely enough, I mean, there's actually some really good stuff there, so I'm going to lock that down real quick. I'm going to draw some lines and fake it till I make it. Let's say that's a line. I'm going to say it goes across. Oh my gosh, my O-snap. Hopefully nobody's else is like, because when somebody messes with your O-snap, man, that is one way to piss you off. Anyway, I'm going to try and draw it without O-snap and just kind of fake it till I make it. Please don't copy what I'm doing though, because that was some awful tracing. and you end up having to trim a lot more if you don't just use your O-snap. Well, let's get those pieces. Trim. And actually we could take all these pieces right here and we could just pipe them, right? So as you can see in this project, it's more of like a bunch of pipes, right? Especially the trusses in the background and really just a lot of these pipe-like elements. You can actually pipe something. So I know my computer graphics know this, but if you have any line, right, you can of course pipe it. And maybe that's a little bit easier to see in 3 dimensions. So let's go ahead and do it over there. But to be fair, sometimes what I like to do is at least establish the first circle. In our case, it's pretty big, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, this line could probably be right there to be in the middle of that. I could type in circle and kind of ballpark it. I mean, shoot, that's a big one, right, to say the very least. There's a couple of ways we can do this, however. Obviously, we can use sweep 1 or sweep 2. Not exactly super important here, but we could also just pipe it. So pipe, it's going to say, hey, how big do you want it? I'm going to say, not that big. But my O-snap isn't working, so it just likes to do whatever the f it wants. Fucking shit, man. Obviously, this episode is not for kids. As you can see, I can't even tell. Oh my god, it's just like giving up on me now. Oh man. I just want this circle. Well, to be fair, if you have some sharing issues, you know what? I'm not going to record it next time. And you'll have to pay attention. You can also sweep something. So for instance, if you have a profile touching a line, you can type in sweep or sweep 1, sweep 2. In our case, I only have 1 rail, so it's a sweep 1. It's going to ask me for the rail, which is here. It's going to ask me for the profile, which is here. Enter. And it's going to ask for a direction, which in a circle doesn't really matter. I hit enter and it's going to move that circle along the line, right? So again, kind of another way of cheaply making a pipe. As you can see, was having a hard time of just O-snapping. I just hit cap there to cap something. From here, these should be a little bit easier as long as O-snap wants to work. Pipe, enter. In my case, I can't just guess it because it is in meters, but I also, there we go. So that's already looking quite roundish, but that's looking pretty sweet. Here's a good instance where you would actually use group, right? Especially if I wanted to put them together later. I could take each of these pieces, since they're part of the same group or truss, and I could actually group them. Again, be very careful with group because no commands work inside a group. If somebody's telling you, hey, you should group things, don't do it, because it's a terrible way to do something. In fact, that's probably not even a good idea. I shouldn't even have told you to group it, right? Because now you're trying to explode this, and you can't. Nothing will happen inside of a group. And I'm tired of answering that question. So in order to get around it, we can also join it or put it together, right? Also, join is not the same as group. As you can see, I just undid the grouping. But I can also do a Boolean what? Union? Boolean union. Awesome. In fact, it's going to at least try to put some of those together. I think it kind of missed the mark on that one. But that's okay, because now I want to take this piece, line it up with my piece, and to be fair, that's pretty off. So let's bring it down. And let's bring it back this way. Right? Again, I'm building it on the ground. All right, so just keep that in mind. I could build it this way too if you'd rather me build it upside down, but something like that's doing pretty well. But we've already got all the pieces, so let's take that. Again, we're almost finished, guys. I know it looks like we got a lot to go, but we don't. So I'll take that piece, copy, all day long. What it does best, right? Now, obviously, I shouldn't have got that little curve in there. My bad. See how it's like following us? Get out of here, curve. And in my case, these need to get a little bit bigger, or get two different ways. And now I'll take this entire piece, rotate it, and I've got the whole piece, right? In fact, I can even take some of those, or, just make myself a pipe. But that would be a pretty good group to have, right? Nobody wants to select all that again. So I'm going to type in group. Now I'm going to fake it till I make it, but copy. Let's say the spacing was, I don't know, 21 feet apart. 21 feet, enter. 42 feet, enter. So on and so forth, right? But imagine how much we can get done, right, to say the very least. Last but not least, let's get a couple of more poles in there. And obviously we could talk about foundation. And I forgot, today's not Friday. I guess I can do a part 2. I was trying to get a lot in here, especially after it's already 2:30. And I do want to give some time to not only watch this video, but to practice as well and get some feedback. So I'll go ahead and end it there for today. But at least in terms of what we covered, just keep in mind that we went over how to scale something, how to put the image down, noticing the different discrepancies. We went over some of the methods that you can do to obviously just trace it, right? And of course, just trace it, right? And then lastly, we went over really what I call the wire cut method, but really it's more like a bandsaw method. So if you were doing this in reality, you know how they make these shapes on the bandsaw, right? They stick the top view, they stick the side view, and they make sure that it's all taped together, and they cut it out, right? To be fair, it's way easier in Rhino, right? Anyway, trying to keep all those pieces together with a bandsaw can be quite difficult, right, to say the very least. But essentially that's what we're doing, wire cutting from the top and wire cutting from the side, actually to reveal a pretty interesting part. And we learned some chamfer fillet and some chamfer editing, and those kinds of things. Obviously the ability of copying is amazing, right? But keep in mind, this is potentially what I may need to make my physical model, for instance, right? Oh, thank goodness I grouped that, by the way. I was just clicking on it like it was grouped. But, oh man, I need to print this out so I can start getting with my partner to basically, he or she needs to start making it for me, right? So I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to make 2D. And I'm sure you guys have already gone over this already. But if you make 2D, of course, now we can print this dang thing out. Or arguably, I could even, again, use it for Illustrator because it's now flat. You guys see that? I know it's kind of hard to see in a 3-dimensional view, but it's pretty flat. So again, you can go back and forth between this 2D and 3D situation. However, next time I'm going to go over a little bit more foundation, and I do want to start maybe covering another project too, because I know some of you guys are going to have more questions than others. This one's actually particularly easy because of how many times it copies itself. But in some cases, like Ron Champ, there's not a lot of copying pieces, right, to say the very least. But anyway, major questions that are just on the mind. Again, this is a good opportunity to ask them because we can get them recorded.
What's due exactly Friday then? Is it just progress on this?
Oh yeah, progress on all of it. So drawing and setting up your model. I'd start getting materials because then we could start talking laser cutter. Now I'm gonna probably do a shorter tutorial than obviously today. I forgot that I have 2 days, not just 1 day. So I was trying to shove a lot into it. But for Friday, that's a good question. I want you to get started with the 2-dimensional drawings. In fact, it would be really great, instead of pinning up the cheap stuff from the internet, let's pin up the first thing you have in terms of a drawing. However, what I would say is let's get it traced. That's kind of, what's the saying? Operation numero uno? What do you call it? They say a word, not operation. Yeah, before they say numero uno. Primary, gosh, I forget. Anyway, it looks like the #1 problem or the #1 suspect right now is tracing, right? So we need to trace this guy. We need to get it to scale, right? So some of you guys probably learned today, like, oh man, we don't have to do the whole model. Awesome. So let's make that decision if you haven't made that decision yet. But for Friday, trace it. I would say, I want to see some traces.
Going back into where you did tracing and the very first one you did you stop like just short right with the yellow lines?
Mm-hmm.
fully tracing would be going through every line that's on that drawing.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
eventually you kind of want to get the people, you want to get some of the structure. I mean, don't get me wrong, you probably don't have to get this grid line going down through here. I'm not really sure what that is. Fake it till you make it, though, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, don't just start drawing stuff that you're like, I didn't know what it was, I thought it was a giraffe, you know, like,
So
I
like for
mean,
stairs, like it would be like, cause we have a lot of stairs on ours. Would that trace lines go all of them?
yeah.
Go like comes up and then again.
And you could
across?
even make construction layers to where, okay, I'm going to get kind of the grid and sort of light lines, but at the end of the day, guys, this is not any different than analog drafting. In fact, the exact same principles, and I would say what actually makes somebody really good at the digital components is somebody who understands hand drawing, somebody who understands line weight, and that you push the pencil a little harder for darker line weight. Those digital guys, they don't know that stuff. Stuff that you guys just know inherently now after drafting for the last year, right? However, one thing I could say is it's not something entirely new. In fact, what we're trying to achieve in this simulation is, again, back to reality. We're just doing it with a more accurate pencil. Does that make sense? So again, how would you trace this in reality? Well, I'd put it on a whiteboard. I'd start tracing it. Exact same process. Good question, sir. Any others, guys? Yes.
For Friday, do you want the section or the floor plan or just
Both.
draft?
Traced. You walked right into that one.
Once we have it traced out in Rhino, should we layer the different lines so we can change line weight in
Absolutely,
Illustrator?
absolutely.
And
And you know
then-
that, of course, from computer
Yeah.
graphics.
And then we should put it in Illustrator and like beef out the lines.
I'm going to go over some of that on Friday, but yeah, if you already know how to go into Illustrator, by all means, get started.
Okay.
Good question. Any others, guys? Yes, no?
As for the scale, I know we had it at 36 by 24. Did you want that adjusted at all so it's not as large?
Yeah, that was just kind of a ballpark to know how big the drawing is going to be. Now, don't get me wrong, the drawing, guys, isn't just going to be like a little tiny section. It'll be the whole section, right? And in some cases, like Ephraim, who'd you remember again? Raul. You don't have to draw us the forced perspective either. It could just be the section quality, and we're going to see it more in an elevation view. I'd probably hold off on the forced perspective thing, but yeah, to answer your question, you're going to have to trace the whole thing, right? To be fair, it's all the same scale digitally, right? And honestly, we'll talk about a little bit more about that scale and how we're going to scale these drawings now to a 36 by 50 inch drawing, right? Especially once it's to scale. That might be next week. I got to give Longoria something to do, right? But yeah, great questions. Anything else, guys? Yes.
So for the plan view, mine has like 2 stories, and that one has 2 stories too.
Just need one. Yeah. So pick your favorite or the one that exemplifies the project the best. Obviously, don't pick the one with all the basements, right? You know, or all the storage closets. Like, come on, you know what I mean? Yeah. Good questions, guys. Yes, Lala?
We can't work on like a one Rhino page apartment, right?
Not necessarily at the same time. However, as you saw, we can trace to you. Hey, you draw your drawing right now. I'm gonna draw the floor plan. You draw the section. Is that good? Let's work together first in lining them up, and then save that file, and we both work on the save. Does that make sense? After we're done tracing, we put them back together, or maybe we put them back together when we come to Illustrator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the back, we saw that like some people had both the section and the floor plan in one page. Do you
Mhm.
want it like that, or do you want it in 2 different?
Eventually, it will be, right? On that big 36
Yeah.
by 50,
Yeah.
they will line it. You'll have the floor plan and then the section below it.
Okay. Just making sure.
So it's not a bad idea. I would even, what I should have done is actually line these up too, you know, kind of in a more, and I kind of did at first. Oh yeah, I did at first. Never mind. So I'm not going to give you guys this file, but I'll go ahead and give you the one that I was working on last night, because I labeled everything, and I think that's really nice when you label all the commands that you use. So just in case you didn't write it down, again, look for it on Canvas under this assignment. So I'll just put it under the assignments. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Any other questions? It's still recording technically, so all that is recorded. No other questions? All right, we'll end it there.